It's so nice to see you all joining in for the Soul Magnet webinar organized by the Voice of Calvary Ministry. You guys are at the right place at the right time for the perfect topic, that's emotional and mental wellness. Today we've got an expert in this industry, in the field. He is none other than Dr. Atul Aswani, a psychiatrist with a vast experience of nearly 20 years working for Ivy Clinic. And one of the main things about him is he is a person who uses ethics in the industry of medicine, a person who is very friendly, a very key characteristic of a psychiatrist, so that patients can be very open to him, which helps him analyze the situation, the treatment, and the best treatment can be given to him. So be ready, be alert, turn on your videos, get your earphones, keep your volumes on, be alert as we welcome Dr. Aswani to take over the session. Doctor, all yours.
Thank you everyone for being here. Yes, Sheldon, go ahead.
So before Dr. starts, please note, we've always been listening to 45-minute session, 50-minute session, and then jotting down points. But this time, it's going to be a very orthodox, a very untraditional style of webinar. It's going to be more interactive. So be alert. There are questions that we can ask on the chat. We will be telling Doctor on the spot so that he could answer your questions. It is so nice to see you guys. So be alert. It's going to be an unorthodox style of session today. Non-traditional, interactive session. Be alert. If you miss a question, you're out of the league. So be alert. So Doctor, so we'll start with, these times are so challenging for everyone, COVID-19, coronavirus, the government, what can I do? I've lost my job, stress, no money. What do I do? Lockdown. I can't roam out after 5 o'clock. It's so challenging. So now I would want to know a few things from you so that we all get on the right track and get towards how we face this coronavirus mentally, physically, and how do we be strong even in these difficult times. So my one question, or probably a question, would be: all of us have views on COVID-19. So how has this COVID-19 affected us individually or a society?
Okay. Yes. So I think even before we want to solve a problem, we need to know what it exactly is. So when COVID-19 began, there were a lot of vulnerabilities which were exposed. So it's like this, that you could see vulnerability at every level. You could see health vulnerabilities. After all, it's an infectious disease. So anyone who had a comorbidity, anyone who had a lot of excessive weight, issues with alcohol and tobacco, for them, COVID was going to be very hard. So we had health vulnerabilities, we had emotional vulnerabilities, because we didn't know when cases will come down, when lockdowns will open, and which vaccine will come, whether the vaccine will be safe, whether it will be effective. So a lot of emotional vulnerabilities too. I think there were also vulnerabilities at the level of the family. So there was this rather funny statistic which says that when the lockdowns opened up, there were suddenly increases in divorces. There were also increases in pregnancies. So family bonds became disturbed, and if there was an abusive situation in the family, it became worse because people could not really go out of the house. Of course, there was an emotional meltdown, many job losses, increased personal debt. We are aware of the migrants walking from Bombay to their places back. And yes, international relationships were also strained. Suddenly, our passports and visas had very little value. So, like someone said, COVID began as a health crisis, then it became an economic and job crisis, and then it also became a geopolitical crisis. So, what COVID has done is it has really changed the shape of society, healthcare, politics, and so on. But there is a lot we can do. Okay. After all, COVID is a virus, it is a particle. The only thing it knows to do is spread and multiply. But it does not have a brain. You and me have a brain, you and me have a mind, we have intelligence, and by the grace of God, we can do many things to stop its spread and to ensure that further such pandemics do not happen. Now, you may be aware that there is a general understanding that once in 100 years there is a pandemic. The last pandemic was Spanish flu, but in this pandemic, of course, casualties have been much lesser. That does not decrease our grief if we have lost any near and dear ones. Those are more than statistics. What I'm only trying to say here is that there are plans afoot to make healthcare stronger and better. So we need to know where we are coming from so we can decide where we want to go. So yes, COVID has definitely changed situations, and we are looking at a different baseline.
So, Doctor,
So
in these challenging times, as an individual, okay, one should have some skills to tackle this issue. So, what is the trade or the best way to tackle these kind of challenging situations which have disturbed our mind, our heart, our passion? So, how would I, or probably every one of us, tackle this situation?
okay, so for this, if you can give me a moment, I would like to share my screen. I would like to share a little presentation, and this is about um, these same questions. As I said, COVID has been an emotional, financial roller coaster. I forgot to mention a very interesting quote by Warren Buffett, who says that it is only when the tide goes out that you know who is swimming naked. So COVID did expose vulnerabilities. So how do we, going forward, prepare and tackle this situation? I have always felt that good management is also good psychology, and vice versa. Good psychology is also good management. And in this regard, there is this very a nice author called Stephen Covey, and he has this book called First Things First. Now, how many of you have read that book? Could you just say yes in the chat box? If you have, you can say yes in the chat box. I'll get an idea of the audience. And if you have not read, let me just convey the summary with 2 words. Stephen Covey talks about things which are urgent and things which are important. So if you see on your left hand side, there is a heart attack. Now, managing a heart attack is an urgent situation. It's like having fire in the house. When someone has a heart attack, you run to the emergency. When there is a fire in the house, you call the ambulance. Okay, so that is the quadrant of urgency. But Stephen Covey points out that there is a quadrant of importance. So on the right side, you see this lady jumping, exercising. So the more time I spend in the quadrant of importance, the less firefighting I will have to do in the quadrant of urgency. And what I want to say here is that there were, anyways, a lot of difficulties we had even before COVID. I mean, unemployment was already there to some extent. family issues were already there to some extent, financial issues were already there to some extent. Yes, COVID intensified all of it, but if the problem is intense, then my actions should also be intense. So the more we look at the quadrant of urgency, the more we become like a firefighter, fighting a fire here, there, everywhere in my areas of life. However, someone like a farmer is someone who looks in the quadrant of importance. So he will know this is the time to plant, this is the time to harvest. And urgency will not get us anywhere beyond a point. It is importance which will matter. So, what are some things which are important? Always important to have time for 8 hours of sleep every night. Always important to sleep well. Always important to stay away from alcohol and tobacco as much as you can. Always important to be emotionally intelligent. Always important to have a budgeted financial life, some savings, as little personal debt as possible. Now, these things were true before COVID also. After COVID, these things are all the more important. You know, the things which are in the list of urgency have changed, but the things which are in the quadrant of importance have remained the same. So, if we can get this mindset, this can make our life very strong and very tough.
So how would I take care of this mind? And the mind plays a very important role in the body,
Yes,
being at the
yes.
on the top. So how would I take care of this mind? It's such a vulnerable organ. It can think within a minute. I probably can reach America, but by flight I may take 24 hours to reach America. So how would I take care of this complex organ called the mind?
Okay. So the earlier point that I was making, the meaning or the importance was that we possibly cannot do positive thinking where action is required. What I mean to say is that if I have to cross the road in Bombay or cross the highway, I will not use positive thinking, close my eyes and cross the road. That is a misapplication of positive thinking. So there are physical actions to be taken. The more physical actions we take, the better our life becomes. The more initiative I take, the better my life is. But how will I take initiative if my mind itself is not positive, right? How will I take initiative if I am thinking negatively or if I'm already stressed out? So let me point out to you some negative emotions first, and then we'll look at how to tackle them. So we have stress, which everyone talks about. I'm stressed, I'm stressed. It is almost a habit to say that we are stressed. Then we talk about anxiety. Many of us have a lot of anxieties. Then there are issues with anger. Then sadly, if someone in the family or a friend circle has passed away due to COVID, there is grief. And if sadness is the major mood of the person, then we have what we call as a depression. So, any type of change will cause stress in me, whether it is a physical change, emotional change, or psychological strain. So, stress is good at times. There we call it eustress, and stress is not good at other times, where we call it as distress. Anxiety, we know, is different from stress in the sense that anxiety is a feeling of fear, panic. uh, in other words, it is restlessness. So when I'm not able to rest, it is anxiety. Too many thoughts, panic attacks, and so on. So how do we handle situations like this. A very important thing which has happened because of COVID is that suddenly everyone is aware of mental health, and even in schools there are programs like Mind Matters for children even in their second grade and so on. So if you really want to understand psychology, one of the first things you will come up with is what is called as the cognitive triangle. So the cognitive triangle is three parts: emotion, which is one part of the cognitive triangle, thinking, the second part, and behavior, the third part. So when you hear it the first time, it may not make so much sense. But as you continue hearing it and as you continue working at it, you will begin to understand. And what will you begin to understand? You'll begin to understand that before every thought, before every emotion, there is a thought. So, which means that I can choose my emotions by choosing my thinking. And this is where personal growth happens. This is where we become stronger people. So, what is the popular opinion? The popular opinion is, if I change my country, I will be happier. If I change my job, I will be happier. If I change my house, I'll be happier. But what is the reality? The reality is, if I change my thinking, then I will be really happier. I will be much more happier. So we give regard to the cognitive triangle, and we also begin to realize that sometimes there might be need for counseling, and sometimes there might be need for medication. So just like weight training or running will strengthen the heart and the body, we are looking at um, psychological exercises which make our mind stronger and therefore less stressed out.
So, doctor, with this 20 years of experience, you would have met about thousands of patients whom you've treated successfully. So, definitely, you would have given medicines to them. Medication would have been one of the ways to treat them. But how does counseling work in this time and versus medication? So, would you help us understand counseling versus medication? Uh,
Sure, sure, sure. So on my left side, you have this girl who's brushing her teeth. So brushing your teeth means dental hygiene. You are looking at keeping your mouth healthy all through your life, and that is exactly what counseling does. It teaches us what thoughts we must think and what thoughts we must avoid, or what thoughts we must minimize. However, sometimes, you wake up in the night with this severe pain in your jaw, and at that point of time, there is no time to brush your teeth. At that time, you are thinking, when can I get to the dentist's office? And you go to the dentist's place, and the dentist does a filling or a root canal or something like that. So while using mouthwash, flossing, brushing your teeth, all these are good. They are like counseling. We are learning emotional hygiene. But sometimes we must remember that the brain is also an organ. It's a physical organ. So beyond a point, it will require physical help to run properly. So that is the situation where medication is useful. Thankfully, we have very safe medication, and with very low doses of medication. In the pandemic, I have seen people who have consulted me online, taken treatment for 2 to 3 months. First time when I spoke to them, they were almost having tears in their eyes, crying spells, and so on. That is the extent of anxiety and depression. And after 3 months or so, they are no more in touch with me, because my last consultation with them is a bye-bye consultation where I say that you are through your treatment. Just keep taking care of what you think from here on. So yes, medication is important, but it is not everything. Counseling is important, but it may not be enough if anxiety or sadness reaches beyond a particular point.
So, wanted to understand, how can spiritual resources help us in these times? We've gone through this training the mind versus medication. So, when we look at something in the spiritual aspect, how could it help us?
Yes, yes. So as I have been saying that uh, we have a body, and the hardware of my thinking is my brain, but the software of my thinking is my mind. Even beyond that, since we are spiritual people, since we are people who have a soul and a spirit, I think uh, what spiritual resources can do is take our level of resilience one bit further. So I'm reminded of this little experiment someone has done, in which they saw how many Google searches were happening on the word prayer. And they found that from March 2020 to now, prayer is frequently searched on Google. So there are many people who want to learn how to pray. And what prayer does is that it will give a even bigger expression or a ventilation to all my stresses and my desires. You know, what COVID has taught us is that life is short, you know, and that life is a gift. And this is, anyways, what we learn in our spiritual life, that we have to be very thankful to the person, God, that is, who has given us spiritual life. So, two very practical ways in which we can look at how spiritual resources can help us. One, uh, when you read the text, you find that God has put man at the head of creation. And to me, it is very encouraging to know that just like humankind has overcome the ice age, you know, the floods, the dinosaurs, typhoid, I'm sure we can overcome COVID 19 also, because we are made in His image, and we have been blessed with dominion over everything, and that includes coronavirus, isn't it? So, uh, so that is one major thought. The other major thought comes from this um, very spiritual man called Jonathan Edwards. He was a very bright mind, and at the age of 17 years, he was giving a message, his first message in church, and he talks about why someone who believes in God should be happy. So he says there are three reasons why someone who believes should be happy. Number one, all that is bad in my life is going to come to an end, right? All that is bad in my life is going to come to an end. All that is good is going to become better. All that is good is going to become better. And the best is yet to come. So when we talk about cognitive psychology, we focus on the kind of thoughts which help us to determine our mood. And if you have thoughts like what Jonathan Edwards said, I think sadness will not find a lot of space in your mind. Definitely, it will not be a permanent guest in the mind. Definitely, you will be more resilient than before.
So, Doctor, thank you. So, Doctor, to sum up, you spoke about the impact of COVID-19. Then you spoke about taking care of the mind. You spoke about the importance of counseling, the impact of spiritual well-being to the good side. So, how would you sum up the entire 4 to 5 topics that you've spoken on, the 4 to 5 points? How would you sum up in a nutshell so that that would be like a register line for us? This is the one. It gets registered in our mind forever.
Yeah, so what I would like to say is there are three words, uh, and there are three levels really, if you were to look at it. One is the level of ordinary psychology. Ordinary psychology means you step out of the house, it begins to rain, you are unhappy, your mood is gone. So that is just simple, plain, ordinary psychology. Simple things disappoint us and disappoint us for a long time. That is a place you want to grow up from. And the place where you want to go to is a place which we call resilience. And resilience would mean that if there is a shock in my life, I'm able to absorb it. I'm able to not be disappointed. I am not turned off by failure because I have more faith in the ability that I have to solve situations. So, simple, typical, normal psychology level one, resilience level two. But let me introduce you to another word. Now, when we get packages from Amazon, sometimes we know that we have this word written on them called fragile, handle with care, which means if you don't handle with care, it will break. But there's another word called anti-fragility, which I recently heard from this author called Nicholas Nassim Taleb. He's not talking so much about psychological anti-fragility as much as world system anti-fragility. What he says is, how would it be to have a system which actually gains with shock? So this would be one level beyond resilience. How would it be to be a person where the more the difficulties that come in your life, the higher you rise? A very practical example of that would be weight training. So when we do weight training, we are giving some biological shock to our muscles. And when we do that, they respond by becoming more stronger. So my summary for today would be that you agree gardening is a skill, cooking is a skill, driving is a skill. All of these things are skills. Why not begin to look at thinking also as a skill? So thinking as a skill, majoring on understanding my thoughts, evaluating my thoughts. And when I begin to look at thinking as a skill, I want to reduce some thoughts, increase some thoughts, and do the very best for myself. So my closing message would be, let's look at thinking as a skill which we can learn.
Wow, that's so nice of you, Doctor, to share. So people usually think instruments, singing, dancing are skills, but we've always forgotten that thinking also could be used as a skill, and especially in today's time, thinking is thinking, getting ideas, getting being positive. So, Doctor, we've got a few questions, that popped up on our screen today.
Sure.
And uh, the first question, shall I read out?
Yes, yes, we can look at questions one by one.
When stress and anxiety comes out of frustration and anger, how to redirect it? Or how do I redirect it to the positive side of life?
Okay. So when stress and anxiety,
Comes out of frustration and anger,
mhm,
how do I redirect it towards the
okay,
positive side
okay,
of life?
yes. So this is interesting because in psychology you have a terminology called frustration tolerance. So um, when you look at cognitive psychology, you realize that frustration is a part of life. We cannot avoid it. And the more someone handles it, the more maturity they have and the more persistence they have. So the question is, how do you handle the stress and anxiety that comes from frustration? Maybe I could translate it like this, that how do you reduce the heat which comes from a burning of gas or whatever? My answer would be, why burn what you are burning? Then you will not have as much stress and as much anxiety. See, frustration is a psychological object. Okay. So just like a refrigerator produces ice cubes, in the same way, we produce frustration, we produce anger, we produce stress. My counter question is, if you were to reverse these processes or modify these thinking processes, the same situation which produces frustration might produce neutral emotion. To give you an example, to give you an example, before the pandemic started, all of us were going from home to work and various other meetings. Either we were driving or we were using Uber and so on. So in a day, typically I would take 4 or 5 times Uber or sit in my car and so on. Now, you know that traffic jams are a part of life, which means frustrating events will be a part of life. If the Uber is stuck on a signal for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you have a choice now. The choice is, either you will start yelling at your driver or at someone on your right side, on your left side. Make yourself angry. It's not that I became angry. It's that I made myself angry. There's a whole sea of a difference between those two statements. I became angry assumes that it is automatic to become angry. No, cognitive psychology says you made yourself angry. So I know the person who preaches will have bigger judgment, but still let me say that we make ourselves angry. So what I decided to do and what I always recommend is, if you are in an Uber, you are not driving, might as well listen to an audio book, make those phone calls, take a nap, or if you need to join a presentation, open your laptop and join the meeting online on the road. So frustration did not arise. Frustration did not arise to such a level. So stress and anger were the extrapolations of frustration, and we did not let it happen. So you can nip it in its bud. Long
So,
answer.
So true. The choice remains in our hands. The Lord has given us a choice. We use the choice in the right way. Friends, you could
Yes.
always post your questions directly on the chat to me so that I could read it out to our expert, that's Dr. Atul Aswani, so that he could answer the question in this perfect manner. The next question is, how do I judge the situation and react? Should I do it practically or emotionally? I'll repeat
Hmm.
to the class as well. How do I judge the situation and react? Would the reaction be practical or should it be emotional?
Okay, so interesting question because most situations require both. Practical, I am assuming by the word practical, you are using trying to imply rational, and by emotion, obviously, you are talking about feeling. So the good thing is that we need both. We need both reason and emotion to make a decision. So somewhere you will figure out that you are a more rational person. Somewhere you will figure out that you are a more emotional person. So there are people who are very rational when it comes to deciding on investments and financial decisions, and they are very emotional when it comes to deciding what they would like to eat. So so it's not a hard and a fixed rule. The one word I would like to leave with you is what we call as SA. SA stands for situational awareness. Now, situational awareness is a terminology which is used in aviation, which is used in battlefields, modern battlefields, where you have data coming in from a tank, an aircraft, and a missile, and a satellite, and all the data is fused together to decide what should be the next course of action. So, situational awareness can be developed. In fact, by playing games like Lumosity and some other very nice games, you could develop your situational awareness. By reading literature, you could develop emotional awareness. That is also very important. So the answer is, I mean, the question is really broad, but one answer to that would be look at situational awareness. I'll give you an example. Uh, there is a aviation quote which goes like this: that to take off is optional, but to land is compulsory, right? So somewhere we will have to decide. And they also say that a pilot who has flown 100 hours on the same route has effectively flown only 1 hour because he has not developed this situational awareness.
Very true, doctor. Very true. So, friends, again, if you've got any questions, please do post. We are getting few questions, so within time we will be taking your questions. So, the next question is, what signs do I check on a person with a sudden change in behavior? So now, since we have got people from college, corporate, so is there any specific sudden change in a person's behavior which would help us identify that there is some issue going on, or how do I probably tackle? So, what are those few signs, like two, three signs, which probably would help us identify the situation awareness that you spoke of, situation awareness, and we could tackle it accordingly?
Mm. Okay. So, to begin with, the first things that I always look out for in my clinical conversations is sleep and appetite. You know, someone's sleep has reduced or appetite has been disturbed. that itself is a very important sign that stress is building up. So alterations in sleep and appetite are one. Secondly, how is my ability to work? What is the output I am giving in my office? The third thing would be social relationships. Um, think of a friend who has not called you, and then you call up a third friend and ask them, hey, did he call you? And he says, no, he didn't call. And then the six of you realize that this particular friend, common friend, has not called all of you. So the big markers in psychology are disturbance of biological symptoms, which is sleep and appetite, disturbance at work, and disturbance in social relationships. So you figure out, I mean, you pick out any of these, you must look at that situation seriously then.
So the doctor, this is specific to few people. So now, but we Mumbaikars are probably who are living in a very fast-going city. There are always worries and tensions every day.
Mhm.
There are worries and tensions. So, do these worries and tensions, in the longer run, like probably in the span of 4 years, 5 years, 3 years, or 10 years, lead to some mental issues, which could probably a situation wherein they start thinking about, uh, I would end my life. This is not the right match. I'll go for a divorce. This is not the right career. So, do these small worries and tensions have a greater impact in a person's life in a longer run?
Yeah, yeah. So you are talking about the day-to-day stresses of life, right? Um, Anyways, our body and our brain have a declining function as we age. The more stressed we are, the more disturbed we are. It will show up in higher blood sugars, which is diabetes. It will show up as high blood pressure. It will show up as high cholesterol. It will show up as increased weight, because when when the body knows that the emotional life is unsteady, then the body puts in processes, ways to increase our weight, because that is supposedly a protective mechanism, which is exactly the reason why we need to sit and take an audit, an emotional audit of our lives, maybe once a week. And in that emotional audit, see if it is just my thoughts which are causing me stress, or do I need to take a physical step to reduce that stress? And if you really remove a big cause of stress, you will see that you are feeling 10 kilos lighter. So let not stress continue, because stress is a negative situation for the body, not just for the mind. Stress is going to produce rashes, inflammations, acidities, lower immunity, many such things. So let's not give in to stress in a habitual basis.
Very true, doctor. For students, it's usually exams, results, test time. For people who are in debt, last month to get the debt cleared, stress, and it's all over. We definitely see glow and health getting back. But after all, what are the major causes for these mental issues, mental health problems in today's generation? Because everybody goes through stress. It's a part of life. As you said, frustration should it is become a part of life in today's generation. So, what could be the major causes of these mental health issues, and what could be the best ways to eradicate that from our life? I know some cannot, but what could help us, get us much step closer to eradicate them?
Hmm. So this is really a very big answer, or I should rather say this is a very big topic. So one of the reasons for stress uh, can also be too much social media, too much time before the screen. Since COVID began, there has been a general trend towards sleeping later. So there is a term for it called eveningness. Eveningness means people get free later, then they have to spend time on Netflix, Instagram, and so on. So, so these are things which add, So there is no one cause really, but there is a combination of causes. Now, if I am on social media, I am looking at what my friends are doing. And obviously, my friends will always post the best, most happening pictures of their life. That creates a artificial distance sometimes between people. And the reality is we don't connect with our friends as we would without it. There is a documentary I would highly like to recommend. It's called The Social Dilemma. It is on Netflix and it can probably help us with our social media habits. So, social media would give me the illusion that I am connected to my friends, but in reality, I don't know what's happening in their life. No one will post a selfie of them having tears and disappointment in their life, that today I had a fight with my spouse, today my child didn't listen, and today my mother-in-law was very rude to me. So that will not come up on Facebook or Instagram and so on. What will come up is only the brighter moments. There are many causes really. The more time we spend on social media, phones, technology, the less time we have for exercise. And believe me, if you really want your emotional health to be better, there has to be an hour of exercise on a daily basis. I mean, we can spend 40,000, 50,000 on a new mobile phone, but would we spend that on a treadmill? Or I'm saying treadmill because right now gym memberships, I'm not sure with COVID whether it is totally safe. What I'm trying to say is that would we invest in that physical movement? So exercise is a forgotten part of the whole dynamic. So these are two very toxic combinations. No exercise, a lot of social media, and so on. Social media is not bad. Definitely nothing is bad. Technology is so welcome. I'm talking to all of you through technology. But what would you think if I were to spend the next 2 hours binge watching something? Not good, right?
Very true, doctor. Now, as you said, Rona Dhona, people crying, but there are situations in life where I'm not able to cry. So how would I deal with emotions in a place where I'm not able to cry? It's within me, and someday I may burst. So how would I manage that emotion within me when I can't really cry? मर्द है रोना मना है लड़की हूँ मैं रो सकता हूँ but मुझे नहीं रोना है. So how would I probably manage these emotions when tears don't roll out of my eyes?
Okay, so yes, that's a nice phrase you have coined, Rona Mana. It was Darna Mana hai actually. So, so the point here is also depends on the culture of the family. So when there is this consistent inability to express emotion, or there is no place given to express emotion, then gradually people may feel like, why should I cry? Or does it make sense to cry? So there's a very beautiful thing in psychology, which is called as primary emotion and secondary emotion. So let me say I gave my exam, I failed in my exam. My primary emotion is sadness. I feel like crying. Okay. But then in my class, no one is crying. So what do? I hide my emotion. And when I come home, my secondary emotion is shame, because now I cannot really tell my parents that I did not do very well. And I can also have one more secondary emotion. When my parents appreciate someone else who did well in their exams, I may become angry. They appreciate him, but they don't appreciate me. So emotional expression in a healthy way regularly is a very important thing. If we do not express our emotions, then they create a pressure cooker situation in the mind. And if you want to stimulate the expression of emotion, read tragedy, read comedy, listen to literature, watch movies, talk to people who will ask you, how are you feeling? So your emotions are there, definitely they're there, but you have not really talked about them for a long time.
Thank you, Doctor. We've got 8 more minutes, and there are 3 questions in the queue. Doctor, 3 questions, 8 minutes. So, one question is, how do I overcome the traumatic effect? Okay, so, if I've gone through a bad past, like probably I've broken up with my girlfriend or boyfriend, I've been hit by my father. My 10th scores were not right. My 12th was not right. I was a brilliant child, but I've been unsuccessful. Would that? How do I overcome those past negative aspects of life to have a beautiful future ahead?
Yes, yes. There is a lot of work done on this topic, and the summary of that work is, let the past be in the past. So that is how you want to overall think about it. Now, we must acknowledge that the past will have some impact on me, right? So, if I did not do well in my 12th standard, the mark sheet is not going to change by positive thinking. But if I know that the past is in the past and I broaden my view, I realize that my 12th mark sheet only has leverage towards getting me into graduation and maybe in some jobs where I have to be a lecturer, professor, or something like that. However, beyond that, it does not have any leverage. So, making a broader view of life can really help with letting the past be in the past. Secondly, the this step which I said was a more like a reasonable, rational thing. On the emotional side, it is important that we talk to someone whom who can listen to our disappointments. If there is someone about whom we are angry, in psychology there is something called as an anger letter, where you write a letter in which you put all the facts according to you, and then you just maybe destroy the letter after some time, or you read it after 3 days, 4 days. So there are various tools and techniques to go away from what happened in the past. Rest assured, the best antidote to COVID stress, past stress, whichever kind of stress, is a deep sense of curiosity and always wanting to learn more and do more. So, if I develop that, then I see that the past begins to matter much lesser.
So, doctor, one more question. It just came up. It said there are many people who are not okay to open up and share. So, as a human, how would I try to communicate? How would I try to engage with that person so that I could probably help him in a better? So, what are the steps uh, required to get a contact and get that icebreaker session and get the flow on?
Okay, so for someone who doesn't want to open up, maybe the simple reason is that they don't trust me enough yet to open up. And the best that we can do is be with them, be around them, be open, be empathetic, um, be friendly, and um, for them to open up will take time. The more embarrassing, the more painful a situation is, uh, the more the time it takes. So, because I'm in the profession of delivering psychological help, it is easier for people to open up before me, because as soon as someone starts to say something and then stops, I know I have heard that story earlier also. And I tell them that, is this what you were going to tell me? And then sometimes they may break down, they may say, yes, this is what I wanted to tell you. So then I would tell them that, see, I don't really need to know every detail. I just need to know enough detail to help you. So we should also not be wanting to know everything that happened in the past, exactly how you were bruised and beaten and abused. Not required. Not required. We just need to be there. We just need to be there.
Doctor, last question for the day. It says,
Okay.
how do I deal and share the gospel to paranoid personality disorder people? Paranoid personality disorder people. How do I share the gospel, the love of Christ? How do I share the love that I got from Him? How do I share it with Him?
Okay. Okay. So I don't know who has asked this question, because to diagnose paranoid personality disorder uh, is a difficult task. So please check your diagnosis. And sometimes you might be looking at schizophrenia, or you might be looking at a psychotic episode which requires treatment first. So if it is possible, you could encourage that person to get into a mental health care program where they could undergo some counseling, where they could undergo some medical treatment, so that the paranoia goes away. Because rest assured, it's not only difficult to give the gospel to someone who is paranoid, uh, they may not even be having good relationships with their own family members. So paranoia works everywhere. So a person like that would be suspicious, unhappy with almost every relationship. So many times their family members have kind of given up on them because they don't know that there is treatment available, that things can be better. So look for their mind to be in a better place before you share the gospel. And sometimes we can share the gospel just by sharing care, love, affection, and our company. So if you are really talking about someone who's paranoid, it is unlikely that they have friends. So you could be a friend. You could be a friend. So if you are a friend, they will remember that, because whatever the psychological problem, I can tell you from my experience that sometimes in the hospital we treat people who are aggressive, who are violent, who will maybe throw something at you or want to hit you. But you speak to them with kindness, they will sit down, they will listen to you. They may even break down and cry and tell you that, doctor, I'm going through a lot of stress. At which point of time you can tell them, I understand. Please take your medication, sleep well tonight. We'll talk again tomorrow. So a relationship is like planting a field, you know, you are working at it day in and day out. So it is a commitment that we have taken. It's not like making a sale, because making a sale sometimes can be a very short thing. You know, you take this, give me the money, you get this object, you're out of their shop or they are out of your shop. So if we cultivate a relationship, it will be more easier.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for all questions, for the teaching that is given. We always would want you again on the show so that we could learn more from you because friends, today we all have been blessed to listen to his teaching. This teaching is complimentary for you. So make friends, get in your friends, make more friends, get your friends to join such shows so that you learn so much so that you could share, and build relationships. So before closing, once again, thank you from the team of VOC and the youth who've joined in. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, all your 20 years of experience, the hardships that you've gone through, you shared with so sweetly to us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Also, friends, we're going to have the same show next month on the 20th of August. We've got an amazing guest, Mr. Rajiv Chaludarai. Please join in. We'll be sharing with you the topic, everything about him. The same time, 8:30 on the 28th of August. Join in. Ask your friends to join in. You will be getting same kind of topic, value topic, heavy topic, with simple explanations which you can carry for a lifetime. Put into practice for a better life, for a better career, for better relationships. Thank you so much, friends and family, for joining in. Good night. Happy weekend. Meet you tomorrow for the Sunday service, exactly at 10 o'clock. The link will be shared to you. Good night. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you and bye-bye.